I'll never forget the last phone call I received from my mother. It was late, around 2 a.m., and I was just drifting off to sleep when the phone rang. At first, I thought it was a mistake. No one calls me at this hour, and definitely not my mother. She lived in another state, so I checked the caller ID, half expecting a wrong number. But the name that flashed across the screen made my blood run cold. Mom. I picked up, my voice shaking as I whispered, "Hello." There was a long pause, and then I heard it. A faint, raspy voice, barely audible through the static. "It's me. Mom. I'm sorry." I froze, my mind racing. The voice didn't sound like my mother. It was too strained. Too distant. I could barely make out the words, but what made it worse was that I just knew, she was in trouble. "Mom. What happened? Are you okay?" There was a gasp on the other end, followed by a sickening silence. Then, through the static, a whisper came again, clear this time, almost too clear. "Look, behind you." I spun around, my heart slamming against my chest. The room was dark, nothing but shadows stretching across the walls. I had been alone in my apartment for weeks. But as my eyes scanned the space, I saw nothing. Just my empty living room. The sudden silence on the other end of the line made me uneasy. "Mom." I called out, my voice trembling, but the line went dead. The call ended, the screen going black. I sat there for a long time, holding the phone in my hands, staring at the glowing screen, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The voice had been real. It had been my mother, hadn't it? I stood up and walked to the window, trying to shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong. That's when I saw it. The reflection in the glass, someone standing behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. I could hear the blood roaring in my ears as I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. And just as I turned to grab my keys to leave, my phone rang again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I picked it up immediately. "Mom." I whispered. The voice on the other end was no longer raspy. It was calm. Too calm. "I'm right behind you." It's strange. I never believed in the supernatural. Ghosts. Haunting. All just stories. But something happened when I bought that antique mirror. I found it at a little thrift shop downtown. It was an old, ornate piece, the wood intricately carved with designs I couldn't quite make out. The shopkeeper didn't seem eager to sell it. He almost seemed relieved when I took it off his hands, as though he was getting rid of something unpleasant. But he didn't say anything about it, just smiled that tired smile and said, "It's a rare find. Take care of it." I should have left it there. I brought the mirror home, placed it in the hallway, and for days, nothing happened. At first, I didn't even notice anything strange. The mirror was beautiful, a nice addition to my otherwise dull hallway. But then I started noticing something odd in the reflection. It wasn't me. Or at least, not entirely. At first, it was subtle. I'd glance at the mirror and see something behind me, moving slightly out of sync with my own movements. A shadow in the corner that I didn't recognize. A flicker of light where there shouldn't have been any. It was always just a split second, so I chalked it up to my eyes playing tricks on me, but the reflections grew clearer. And darker. One evening, I stood in front of the mirror, brushing my hair, when I saw it, the figure. It was standing just behind me, a shape I couldn't fully make out. But I felt its presence. The air around me seemed to chill, and a cold, creeping sensation crawled up my spine. I turned, my breath catching in my throat, but the hallway was empty, yet, when I looked back at the mirror, the figure was still there. It was close now, standing just behind me, its face a blur, its eyes black voids. It seemed to be watching me, studying me. I tried to look away, but my reflection wouldn't let me. It stayed locked in place, staring back at me. My heart pounded as I felt a terrible pressure on my chest, like the air itself was pressing in, suffocating me, and then, in a voice so soft, I almost didn't hear it, the reflection spoke, "Why don't you let me out?" I ran from the house that night, leaving everything behind, the mirror, the figure, and my sanity. But I can't escape it. Everywhere I go, I feel it. I see it, lurking in the edges of mirrors, reflections in windows. It's always there, waiting, and soon, it will find a way out. I moved into the house on Elm Street because it was cheap, and frankly, I didn't care. I'd been through some tough times, and a quiet little home in a neighborhood that felt untouched by time seemed perfect for me. I should have known better. The first few days were uneventful. The house was old, but sturdy. The creaky floors added character, the dust gave it a lived-in feel. There was only one thing that stood out, a door, tucked away at the end of a hallway, far from the rest of the rooms. It had no doorknob, just a strange pattern etched into the wood, like it was never meant to be opened. Curiosity got the best of me, as it often does. One evening, after a long day of unpacking, I decided to try the door. I tried pushing on it, but it didn't budge. Something inside me told me to leave it alone, but I wasn't going to let it beat me. I found a crowbar in the shed outside and pried the door open. It wasn't a room at all. It was a narrow, spiraling staircase that led down into darkness. A wave of cold air rushed up from the abyss, and I hesitated. But curiosity won out again, and I took a step down. The air grew colder with each step I took. My flashlight flickered as I descended deeper. The walls of the staircase were covered in old, decaying wallpaper, but what struck me most was the smell, something foul, like rotting meat. I gagged, but I kept going. At the bottom, the stairs opened up into a small room, its corners swallowed by darkness. There was nothing inside but old furniture covered in dust. It looked like a forgotten storage space. But then I saw it, the mirror. It was a massive, freestanding mirror, its frame gold and tarnished with age. I don't know why, but I couldn't look away. As I approached, I noticed something in the reflection. It wasn't me. It was someone else, a figure, hunched over, with its face obscured by shadow. It didn't move at first. But then it moved, jerking its head toward me, as though it had been waiting for me. The reflection grinned. A wide, terrifying grin that stretched impossibly across its face, and then the voice. Deep, distorted, and dripping with malice, "You shouldn't have come down here." I ran, but it was too late. The door had slammed shut behind me, trapping me in that dark room with the mirror. It's been days, and I haven't been able to leave. The figure keeps watching, whispering, waiting for the moment when I make the final mistake. I'm starting to wonder if the house ever really had a front door at all.